So we are theming this release more in terms of what is it? Collaborate, accelerate, and what was the other word? I forget. Uh, Investigate, collaborate, and accelerate. I have a sticker on my wall. And so anyway, this I like to say this changes everything. Maybe not everything, but a lot. And you will see why, hopefully, after this presentation. My name is Vincenzo Menanno, Chief Innovation Officer at Beezwax, 30 years of experience plus. We have lots of different clients we do work for, lots of different projects. We're a large team. End of last year, we went over 100 people. We don't do just FileMaker work. We do Tableau, web integration, IT, DevOps, and FileMaker. We have a busy blog, a lot of FileMaker blog posts, but we also have blog posts about Tableau, web, and other topics. So feel free to check out our blog at some point in time. So today's agenda, we'll go over a brief history of what Inspector was or has been up until now, or soon to be, because 8 is not released yet, soon to be released. Workflow comparison between 7 and 8, kind of a processing comparison as well too, and then we'll look at a bunch of demos. And we won't have feature comparison time to go through, but it mostly cover it in the comparison and the workflow comparison, the processing comparison. The feature comparison was really more of a comparison, a detailed comparison of what used to be in 7, what's in 8, what's not in 7, that kind of thing. And then we'll do a recap if we have time. Cool. So brief history of Inspector. Again, I've been doing this for a long time. This was a 3.1 version of Inspector. Before that, it used to be called Analyzer, and before that, it was actually called DocuScript. And so over the years, we try to rethink, reimagine, re-architect how the solution of Inspector works. And so over the years, a lot of different approaches have taken shape. We had localized versions of Inspector to support all the 11 languages that Claris was shipping their product in, and that was quite daunting to keep that updated. So we stopped doing that. InspectorPro in the version 6 and 7 is only in English, but it can process DDRs from any language. It's just the UI is not localized in all the languages. Inspector 7, we have this progressive dashboard that you could see, etc. But 8 will also have a dashboard. We're still working on it, but so let's take a look at what the workflow comparison of 7 used to be. So just a quick question. Everybody knows what a DDR is? DDR is an XML representation of the data, of your metadata, and there's a new kind of format available if you choose Save as XML, which is right next in the Tools menu, right next to Save the DDR. And so with version 7, you had your solution hosted on the same server as Inspector. You would ask for the DDR, and it would generate the DDR, and you'd have to ask it for it with a client app because it's not a scriptable step, and so it can't be scripted, nor can it be run on server. It's not a server compatible step, so there's nothing to generate that in an automated way, although I think some developers have done AppleScript to generate it, but you still need a client application to generate the DDR. So once you've downloaded the DDR, you then upload it through Inspector, and then Inspector uploads it to the server, and then it processes it on the server. So downloading it from the server, uploading it to Inspector, all time intensive, not able to be scripted, not server compatible, very, very slow. And Save as XML, ironically, is even slower than DDR, especially if you're generating it from a hosted file and you've got some reasonable size system. I would not recommend you do that. So that's very, very slow. If on the other hand, version 8, we are moving officially over to using the save as XML format, and so the file is hosted on the same server as Inspector is running, and so the solution, you can copy over this add-on that we provide, and once you've added the add-on, it adds some scripts that can automatically talk to Inspector directly. So it'll generate the XML, and that takes very little time, especially if you generate it on server. And then as soon as it's generated, it tells Inspector, go process this XML. And so it does so right on the server. And the beauty of this is that Save as XML is server compatible, and our add-on makes it really easy to add that functionality into your solution. Every time you run it, you have the option to add a comment or not add a comment. It's up to you. You can leave it blank and just run it. And so it just immediately runs on the server. And InspectorPro doesn't even need to be open for this to work. It could just live on the server. And then when you fire it off, it just knows that once it's generated the XML, it asks Inspector to process it. And it's very, very fast on the server. So that's the beauty of it. So processing comparison, just really quick, here's a graph of what Inspector 7 is, or soon will have been. And this is a graph of Inspector 8. So this is what kind of reduction we've seen in our re-architecting it from the ground up. So we've had kind of almost a 30% reduction in tables, 64% reduction in table occurrences, 97% reduction in relationships, which is crazy. And then the dependency table is where all the activity really goes on for Inspector. So it's the intersection of this field depends on this value list for validation, or the other way around, this value list is referenced by this field. So it's that intersection where those facts live. And so what we were able to do is, by reducing the width of the dependency table and reducing the number of indexes, we saw dramatic improvements in performance. And so this is 7, and kind of postulating or pretending we have 100 analyses. And I have done systems where a solution we've had hundreds of analyses, and over time it just gets slower and slower, just because what it's doing is actually gobbling up all the items from the XML every time you run it. So Inspector 7, if you have 27,000 plus items for, as a collection of fields, layouts, tables, value lists, scripts, et cetera, it'll add those records on the first analysis. It'll bring them in again on a second, the third, the fourth, et cetera. So after 100 analysis, it's not unrealistic that you could end up with millions of rows of data across all the different tables that Inspector stores data in. However, in 8, what we are doing is something very different, which is we're benefiting from the fact that we have this new architecture in Save as XML, which I'll explain momentarily. But basically, we're grabbing the first batch of data. The first analysis is considered like the baseline, and it gobbles up everything. And then after that, we can detect where the changes have happened, and then just process those changes. And that literally happens in seconds. And so if you're adding code, it's going to grow. If you're refactoring code, it's actually going to shrink, meaning your footprint in Inspector of your system is actually going to have fewer and fewer records because you're getting rid of data. So the only thing that would continue to grow is the history and the history items that represent the changes that you've made. So for example, if you've changed the field comment, you'll see that there's a history record created that says, oh, this field got changed, and this field attribute was the one that changed, and this is what it changed from and to. So in the same analogy of 100 analyses, you'd end up with a total time of 10 minutes versus Inspector 7 probably taking you 18 hours. And this could all be run within a day. As a matter of fact, you could probably run 200 or 300 analyses in one day on a system, and you could run it either manually, invoke it, or you can have it run on a schedule every minute, every 5 minutes, whatever you like. And whatever's changed, it's going to find it and pick it up and document it. So it's a very, very different approach than what we used to have. And so it kind of helps you kind of stay in sync with what's going on in your solution. Again, total items could be millions. Inspector 8 is just going to document one-to-one with what's there. And the baseline is up to 5 times faster than 7, and then up to 40 times faster than 7, depending on the complexity of the solution. That all varies, but roughly it's dramatically different in terms of performance. So because we've now switched to using Save as XML, there are new things in that didn't exist before in the DDR. And so we have these things called catalogs, and catalogs have modification counts. They also have username, account name, and timestamps, along with a UUID for that catalog. And so each item has also a modification count of its own. And that is actually not the case in some places. They don't have modification counts in all the areas of all the items. And so it's unfortunate, but we have to kind of work around that issue. So lower level items like layout objects, script steps, and custom menu items or layout parts, they don't have those modification counts. So we have to do something else to see the changes that have occurred there. But basically, the catalogs, there's maybe a handful of them. And once we analyze something, we can detect right away which of the catalogs have changed. And then we scan the items in the catalog and we find which items are different. And then we process those and literally we are done. So other new things in the Save as XML are parts, which we didn't have before. So for example, top navigation part, a body part, all the objects that live inside that part. And so you have a member count. And so we're also able with parts to do things where if you have a sub-summary part and you have a field in a sub-summary part, so that part depends on that field to do the sub-summarization. That field before in the DDR was not being tracked, and so as a dependency, but now we can track it as a dependency. So those are new things that we're able to do. Table occurrence notes, we can have those represented, and you can attach emojis. As a matter of fact, you can attach emojis anywhere in the system, and they come through just fine in the Save as XML. Okay, any questions so far? Nope. Okay. So let's take a look at some demos really quick. So here's how you create a new solution. An Inspector, top right, you click the New Solution button. You'll get a card window. You type the name of your solution. You type in the name of the file that is your main controller file. So if you have multi-file solution, you make one file the main file, and then from that file, it will generate the XML for all the related files. It'll generate what is called the solution ID, and you'll see in the next steps here how you can integrate that Inspector add-on with that solution ID and link these two things together. So we have an add-on that you can add to your solution, and basically when you drop it in place, first off, when you add it, it adds scripts, a table, a layout for the card layout, and then when you drag this icon over, it'll add this button that will trigger this script. And the script will let you see this card window where you can type in your solution ID. And that's it. Once you've added this add-on and you've typed in your solution ID that you created in Inspector, all you do here is type a message, hit return, and it'll start processing on the server, and it will know how to communicate with Inspector and process that data. So the other thing you can do is when you press that button, the process button, you can actually hold the Option key down and bypass the message, so you can just get it to run without having the need to type a message and hit return altogether. We have some, so you can fire it off. Let me just pause this for a second. So you can fire the integration off from your solution, or you can trigger the generation of the XML or upload the XML right from Inspector. And there's 3 different methods you can run that from Inspector. I'm showing all 3 of them here. One of them is to manually upload it. Another one is called window names. It'll generate it by the window name that you provide. And then the other one is the add-on that we added, which InspectorPro can talk to your file using the add-on that you added. So that's using the FMP URL. So if we play this, you'll see the first one is basically, you've generated the XML beforehand, and you want to upload it. So you choose the folder where it lives. It'll send it to the server, and then it'll process it, and then that's going to be done. Next, we're going to make some changes to this layout. So we're going to add a button, or move the button, and then we're going to trigger the other option here, which is by window names. And so here, the window names is down below. You see meetings, and so it looks for the file called meetings to see if you have a window by that name, and then if that file is open with full access, it'll generate the XML, and as you can see here, it's running, and I let it run just because it's a very small file, and yet it takes over a minute plus to generate the XML for this really tiny file. If you generate this on server, it's almost instant. So there's a lot of overhead, and it takes a lot of time to generate it. So if you have a large file, the first 2 options where you manually upload it, whereas you have to generate it beforehand, or using the window names, those 2 methods really should be only used if you have a file that's on your computer and you don't have it hosted, where you can work with it locally and then have Inspector run the processing on the server. So I'm going to fast forward this a little bit so we don't have to wait for it. So eventually it'll complete, and then it inserts the XML back through Inspector onto the server, and then it processes it on the server. Okay, so, and then the last method, we're going to, again, make a few layout changes. We're going to delete this item, and we're going to delete this other item, and then we're going to add a button, color it in a different color, and we'll go ahead and process it on Inspector. This time we're using the add-on, and so the add-on, all it does is it uses FMP URL to talk to this file on that host, and runs a script that's been inserted using the add-on. And if you look, there's it's already processed. There's those 2 deletions at the bottom, and a number of changes, and an additional layout object. And we'll see more of that, those details of those changes in the next videos. Okay, so that's how the integration for the add-on, how you add the add-on, how you then link them up, and then if you want to run it either from your solution or you want to run it from Inspector, there's those options. So resetting and deleting, basically you have a gear icon on the solution, and you can reset, you can change the name of the solution, you can change some other attributes of the solution, but basically if you have thousands of analyses and you want to start over, you can basically reset the solution, which means the solution doesn't get deleted, just the data for all the analysis and all the history get removed. And if you have notes and tags, they stay and they link themselves back up. However, if you want to delete the solution, you can also press the delete If you hold the Option key down, it'll just go ahead and delete the solution and remove it without presenting you a dialog. So, you know, the Option key is kind of works in the same way in all the different places where you're presented with a dialog. Staying in the zone is another goal of this solution, because you always used to have to generate the XML or the DDR, sorry, beforehand. It takes time to generate it, takes time to process it, etc. Here, I'm just going to show you that as you make changes and every time you run it, it just gets out of the way. So I've just made some layout changes. I'm going to make another change here before I run it. I'm going to remove this button from this layout, and then I'm going to run it. I'm going to hold the Option key down. It's running. If I go look on the server and click on the history, I can show the history. And so here's the deleted object. Here's all the 12 attributes of the changes to that layout that got picked up. And so again, holding the Option key down allows you to get it fired off, get it running, and you can continue working. Here's another example that I'm showing with security, where I'm going to change Julia's account here. I'm going to change the privilege set. I'm going to change the description, and then once that's done, I'm going to run it again, and we'll look at some of the changes that show up in the history. So this time, I'm running it. I hold the Option key down. I go back to look at the history. It'll bring up the 4 attribute changes to that account. So again, the description, the privilege set changed, etc. So this time I'm going to go into the dashboard. I'm going to go to the accounts view. I'm going to search for Julia. This has kind of a history icon here on the far right. And this shows you the changes to that account and when they were made. So we'll do a few more changes, and we'll take a look at that, how that history shows up differently for it. So again, I'm going to change the privilege set, going to add some more text. I'm going to change the require password change on next sign-in, click OK, and then I'm going to process it. This time I'm not holding the Option key down. I'm going to go ahead and type a message and then run it. I just have to basically hit return, and it's running. And if you look, there it is. It's already updated. And again, if we go look at the history for it, let me pause here for 1 second, just because it's important to show this. So from the bottom up, we have a blue bar on the side, and it'll show a blue bar if the account existed when you ran your first baseline. If that's the case, then Julia account existed when you did your first analysis. If that's not the case, and Julia's account was added sometime after the first analysis, you'll get a green bar, and it'll say who added it and when, and then in what analysis it was added. And then every time that Julia's account gets picked up, that changes were made to it, you'll show an orange section. It's sub-summarized by that account, username who changed it, when it was changed, and what analysis that happened in. And then all the attributes of all the changes that were picked up for that account. So again, I'm just showing account here, but this applies to anything: fields, value lists, tables, scripts, etc. And then at the very top, it'll show a purple bar if the account still exists. If the account doesn't exist and it was deleted, and there's ways to find it, even if it's deleted, it'll tell you who deleted it and when, and it'll show a red bar. So like in this example, we're going to go ahead and delete Julia's account, and we'll show you how to locate it. So delete Julia's account, and then we're going to go ahead and run it. And now we're going to see the account disappear. And so we can no longer find it in the list of accounts. However, if you go to the dashboard and you do a global search, we've allowed global searching on history. So now you can bring it back from the dead, see the history, and you can see all the changes, who made them. Again, it existed, it got changed again, and then it was finally ultimately deleted by the Menanno today at 10:47 p.m. So that's just kind of giving you kind of a feel for how you can stay in the zone and do work, and then see what changes have occurred on that item. Again, that applies to any area across the system. It behaves the same way. Again, here's a list of all the analyses that were run. It'll show every time it runs, and if it was run manually versus a scheduled script. So here you have a schedule that runs every minute, and this one picked up one addition, two modifications, and one deletion. And that one, or these two modifications, it could be two layouts that got modified. But again, at a lower level of detail, you have all the attributes, history items. So not only are you tracking the fact that the layout got changed, but we're also tracking all the attribute changes for that layout. So you're only seeing the count of items, but below that there could be a lot of different attribute changes to that item. Let's look at something else. Let's look at layout styles. So if you have a layout like this one, and you have different styles of these objects. So this one's a default style. These next 5 are theme styled. These ones here have been saved into a style, but haven't been saved into the theme. And then the last one is locally styled objects, where they've been just modified, but not saved as a style at all. If we go look for that layout called styles, we can go to the styles section, sub area here, and we can see all the styles. We have 5 theme, 5 layout, and 10 local. So let's make this window a little bit smaller so we can see it. And then let's go change those objects on this layout. And so I'm going to change these to be the same style as the themed one. And then these ones, I'll save them as another theme style that's already been saved. So let me go back to browse mode. Let me run it from Inspector. Again, holding down the Option key forces it to run. And then if we look here momentarily, all these values are going to show us theme style and all. There's no more layout styles and no more local styles. So again, this whole idea that you work, you run it, you can get answers really quickly, and it keeps you updated as to what is the current state of the solution. We also have the ability to add users to the solution. So you can add a user here. So we're going to add Tony Menanno, and then you have 2 privileges that you can assign. You can have an InspectorPro user privilege, and if you turn that on, then the user can add, update, or delete that solution because they're the owner of that solution. If you have it off, then this user only can see solutions that they are members of. So in this case, I'm going to add Tony Menanno as a manager, and then I'm going to add myself as an architect, and then I'm going to add Brendan as a developer. Okay, so, and now those are the 3 people that, apart from admins, can see that solution called meetings. Okay, let's look at locating items. So this is an interesting video. So oftentimes when inspector finds a problem, you need to locate the item. In this case, the inspector and FileMaker shows you absolute location, but the XML gives you those location numbers. So I'm going to look for that layout called master demo, and I'm going to go to those 40 objects, I'm going to select that text object, and if you see here in this view, you're getting both the relative location and the absolute location over the popover. You're also able to click the arrow button to see its parent. So that item is in that tab panel. If I move the item outside of the tab panel and then run it, again, holding the Option key down, you'll see the object move out of the tab panel. And so it gives you the information kind of real time once it updates. And then over here in the history, you'll see that the attribute for the parent object type was changed from panel to nothing. So it's no longer in the panel. If I undo that change and then run it again, you'll see that the object on the left here will go back and link itself back to the being a member of that panel. So really easy to toggle that green setting on or off as well. And what I'm showing here is that you're able to kind of scroll around and click on things, and it's very fluid. All these demos were done in Florida. The server's in California. The performance is really, really good over a WAN as well. Okay, two more things. I'm just going to pause here really quick to see if there's any questions. Okay, two more things to demo here. First off, there's a lot of information to present, and so sometimes we try and condense it. So here's all the layout script triggers, and it tells you how many triggers are enabled for this layout. And if you click on the popover, you'll get the detailed information as to what are the scripts and what options are enabled for that script trigger. And then if you look at the problem icon, we also now surface a popover as well to give you more detailed information as to what are the problems that exist on that item. So again, drawing your more information and bringing it to you, even though that there's a little limited space in the list view. So okay, so dropping indexes is something that we were able to add recently. And so if you look at the schema of this table, you'll see that we have three fields at the top that have the indexes turned on: status, due date, and subject. Inspector is also tracking those, and it's showing you those three fields. They all have the indexes called it's all. You can enter the account name and password for this file, which we don't store, but we store just for this session. And then you can do right from Inspector is drop the index of a selected field, or you can drop the index across the found set. So, so I'm dropping the indexes here on all three of those fields. If I go and I process it, again, holding the Option key down, if you look in the background, it gets updated, and there's no more indexes. And just to prove the point, there's no indexes in that table. So right from Inspector, you're able to manage some of the schema, and we're hoping that in the future, there'll be other things that we can do directly to manage from Inspector. One of the things that we've been asking for a long time is a deep linking protocol. So I have a UUID of something or an ID. I want to be taken to that thing in your solution so that I can go directly and make changes to it or fix a problem. Or the other way around, I have a field or a script that I want to see all the history of changes that have occurred because we've been running it in Inspector for a few months now, and I want to see all the changes and who made them. So, but that's something I'm hoping that will come eventually, and we'll be able to leverage that in both directions, kind of a bi-directional deep linking protocol of some kind. Okay, I know I'm kind of running through this quickly. I'll do this last demo, and then I can take some more questions. So we're adding some other really cool, amazing capability, and that is we're linking with Git. So this kind of speaks for itself. So if I have a script and I add a step that has some comments and some emojis. I'll change this install menu set option, and then I'll change this calculation to something else. I'll delete this step 14, and then I'll go and I'll save this script, and I'll run it using Inspector. I'll hold the Option key down. If I go look at the dashboard, I go pull up that script, and I go find it using Inspector. It's called master. So I'm gonna just type master, hit return. Now I'm looking at that script. And if you click on the Git icon, you'll see the current state as it is represented in Git. This is a web viewer for that specific script and all its associated steps. We also have a blame view. For those of you who know Git and know what this is, you'll understand that this is also very powerful. And then the last view is a view that you can choose to show history, and you can show the latest changes to that script from just prior to before I made these changes to what it is now. So again, this step here was added. This custom menu set was changed. This other step here was also changed, where there was a change to the calculation, and then this install menu set option was removed. Now, with Git, you can also add comments to this commit, or these changes that have showed up in this commit, or I can add comments right to the item, to that line item, and I can have at mention with someone who wrote that step or modified that step directly in Git. So you're using all that functionality that lives in Git. All we're doing is linking to Git, and we're pushing the changes. And this is going to work not only for scripts, but it's going to work for everything: layouts, value lists, tables, fields, custom functions, etc., etc. So yeah, so that's the, that's it. I have the feature comparison that I can go over, but I'm able to also pause here and take any questions. Just to recap some of the things that were covered. So one of the goals is to help you stay in the flow of your work and not to disrupt you. And you can do that two ways. One is you can write a script schedule to tell Inspector, to tell your solution, hey, I want you to run the script that was added from the add-on, and all you have to do is pass it the solution ID as to what solution that file is linked to an Inspector. That's it. It's just a JSON parameter. You say solution ID 158, off it goes. It generates it. It then calls Inspector to run, and it processes it basically on that schedule. Otherwise, you can run it manually. You can add a comment. You can skip the comment, and then just let it run. It's been re-architected from the ground up. It's it's 64. The plugin is 64-bit. It's fully threaded. It was rewritten to support the new XML that's in Save as XML versus the DDR. So we're benefiting from a lot of legacy work that was done before, but it's been refactored to use Save as XML. And that work happened a few years ago, and then we paused it because we weren't seeing much traction on Save as XML. But then in the ETS, we noticed that they made a lot of fixes to the XML. And so last summer, we picked up work on it, and we're working in earnest to get it done in a short order here so that we can move over to using it. It's a one-to-one representation as to what's in your system, not like Inspector 7 before, where every time you run it, it's grabbing everything. What this is doing is, if you have 10 fields in your table and you delete two of them, you're going to have only two, those two fields removed, and you're going to have only 8 fields. And so it's keeping only what's in your system, which means that it isn't going to grow really big. If you have a large system, it'll be as big as all the items that exist in your system. It's 1-to-1. We have history tracking. Again, history tracking at the item level, as well as the detail attribute level. We have notes and tags that you can attach to anything. And we have attribution as a byproduct of what is available in the save as XML. You have who made that change and when. And we have logicator search built in. We have made some improvements to it so that it's more fluid. You bring it up, you type something, hit return, and you're looking at that item right away. So whereas before you had to bring it up and then go select the thing that you want to search on and then type it and then hit return. So it's a little bit more fluid to keep you moving. And so we made enhancements there. We also have, again, as I showed in the last demo, we have get integration support, which is incredibly powerful, something that I can't wait for us as a community to have. We've changed to, in version 8, we're changing over to a subscription-based licensing model and pricing. We also have global search, like I showed. You can search with schema, calculations, and history. There's new features in the XML that we talked about. Catalogs are new, attribution is new, layout parts, table occurrence notes, and more. This basically sets us up for all kinds of future opportunities. This is our foundation. From here on in, we can do some really exciting things. For example, if you're responsible for a script that runs some AWS integration and you don't want anybody messing with your script, you can add an action, and that action is to watch your script. And so if anybody makes a change to an item that the script depends on, if it messes up that script or modifies that script in any way, you'll be notified via either Slack or email to tell you, like, oh, the script was changed by, and it can also mention who made the change if it's able to pick up the attribution change, and so you'll be notified in advance to maybe look at that change to see if it hasn't affected the performance or functionality of your script. So again, it sets us up for all kinds of really cool things that we can do down the road, and I mean it's incredibly different architecturally speaking, both from a performance and functionality point of view. So that's it. We still have this preview that we're running, but you'll have to use the ETS version, because this will only work as a baseline work with the next release of FileMaker. With this, because all the XML changes that we've been waiting for are going to be rolled into this next release, you'll have to be using that release or greater. So it won't work with backward compatible versions of FileMaker like 19 or 20. It'll be whatever the next release is moving forward. And that is all I have. Happy to leave this on my screen for a bit. Take any questions that might exist.
Switching it back over to the Mentimeter session. Thank you, Vince.
Yeah.
Just to recap one question I had just to reiterate what I think you said. But so if you were getting started from scratch on a new solution, it might take a little while. I think you said 10 minutes or something for the XML to process. But then after that, if you were running things in a server-side script, you could have an updated analysis pretty much available all the time just by having a scheduled script running on the server every let's say you did it every hour, then you'd have it at the most an analysis that's no more than an hour old at all times. Am I restating
Yeah,
that?
so sort of. I mean, depending on the size of your solution, right? So let's say Inspector 7 would take 10 minutes to process and then the first analysis of that system. Inspector 8 would probably take 2 minutes or a little bit more to process the baseline. Sorry, the balloons. Anyway, but then once it's done that, anything you change, like I was showing, if you change an account or you change a layout, you change some options on the layout and you run it, it's basically going to run those changes and find those changes and be done within a few seconds. So you can literally run it at every moment that you want to, or you can have a schedule run every couple minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you like. And it's going to pick up whatever changes are present because it's a multi-user development environment. So if you're doing some changes and someone else is doing layout changes and I'm doing script changes, whatever has been saved, it's just going to pick it up and run it, and you'll have attribution associated with whoever the change was made by. Right? So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.